Hey guys, welcome back to the Detox Dialogues Summit. I'm your host, Sam Assa, and I'm so excited to bring you Niki Gratrix today. It's absolutely a phenomenal chat. I was so engrossed the whole time. I didn't want it to end, so I really hope that you guys do as well. I'm going to tell you a little bit about who Niki is first, and then I'm going to go into the 3 key learnings for this class. Niki is an award-winning nutritional therapist, a bioenergetic practitioner and transformation coach, helping people to optimize energy and overcome emotional stress and trauma. In 2005, she co-founded one of the large mind-body clinics in integrative medicine in the UK with patients in 35 countries. In August 2015, she hosted the largest ever free online health summit on overcoming fatigue, interviewing 29 leading experts on optimizing energy with over 30,000 attendees. Niki has spoken on over 25 online summits and has been the keynote speaker at live conferences internationally. Now, what are we going to learn in this class? We're going to look at the impact of stress and trauma on detoxification. That's right. We're going to look at how stress and trauma have a profound impact on the body's ability to actually detox. We're also going to look at how stimulating the parasympathetic side of the nervous system is vital for successful detoxification. And we're also going to look at key practical strategies to reduce stress, resolve trauma, get into the healing mode, and detox for optimal health. Now, if you know me, you should know me by now that I love action steps that you can implement right now, and this one is absolutely full of it. So come on in for this great conversation on the impact of stress and trauma on detoxification. Welcome, Niki. Thank you for joining me on the Detox Dialogue Summit.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Now, Niki, I'm excited to talk to you today about this topic that we're going to be talking about, which is the impact of stress and trauma that this has on detoxification. I think this is a really important topic because there's so many stressed out people in the world today. And so why don't we start there? Why don't we talk about the prevalence of stress and trauma right now?
Wow, big topic. Okay, yes, so it's actually, it's a massive issue, and it's probably the most underestimated sort of impact on health and well-being. So I always mention this gigantic study that was done by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC over here in the US, because it really demonstrates like stress has a profound impact on your biochemistry and your ability to detox or not. So there's this study called the ACEs study, which is Adverse Childhood Events Study, and it looks at the impact of stress on children, and then they correlate that with onset of chronic diseases in adulthood. So they basically found that you have a high level of stress as a child, you have an increased risk of 7 out of the top 10 causes of death. If you had like 6 adverse childhood events, like ACEs, you have a 20-year reduction in lifespan. 4 ACEs means you've got a 400% increased risk of depression, Alzheimer's, and dementia. You only need 2 ACEs, 2 adverse childhood events, to have 100% increased risk of autoimmunity. And fatigue is massive. So it's like the post-child fatigue, fibromyalgia. If you have ACEs in childhood, you have a 6-fold increased risk of chronic fatigue syndrome in adulthood. Now, detox is important for all of those, like having a healthy body and avoiding getting all those things. So the ACEs study, which was 17,500 adults and 67% of all of them said they'd had some level of stress, demonstrates how important it is. And with an ACE, they're looking at things like the impact of stress from parents separating or divorce, stress from things like sometimes serious stress like physical, sexual or emotional abuse, physical or emotional neglect. It can also include things like incarceration by a family member, substance abuse and domestic violence. So that's actually, the ACEs study was the tip of the iceberg in terms of the amount of stress. So when we use the word stress, most people sort of think about daily things like having a schedule that's too busy, tons of emails and looking after the kids, workload. That's really not where the majority of stress comes from. Most of it is actually coming from childhood. And by the way, if you've got a high level of like daily stress, PET scans show the impact on the brain is the equivalent of 1 ACE. So it's significant as well. But the thing about early life stress is it really sets us up for our resilience to stress in adulthood. So when we hear about someone saying, oh, I had this really stressful event, a lot of people I work with, clients, they'll say, oh, I got ill after I had this long period of stress at work. And then you dig into it and you always find that when somebody has a stressful time at work, it's often their relationship with authority figures, where they were in a kind of disempowered state, kept on taking on more and more work, weren't assertive and stood up for themselves, and ended up burnt out and ended up with a chronic illness. And that has come from how they were trained to deal with authority figures in childhood. So really, in truth, like tons of stuff about health actually comes back to looking at ourselves and kind of what happens in childhood. So the future is the past healed, I always say. So it's a big fact that people don't realise. And what's really key for people to take away is, like, how does childhood biography become adult biology? Why is stress, how can it affect the biochemistry so much? There's kind of two main mechanisms. One is the biochemistry. So from the date the trauma happened or the stress happened, there's what we call kind of a neuroendocrine immune system reset. So literally there was landmark research done where they simulated early life stress in rats, and then it was replicated in humans, and they found that there's a change in the epigenetic expression of the glucocorticoid receptors, which is the stress hormone output, like the production of cortisol and epinephrine, adrenaline, and inflammatory cytokines. And essentially you have a lowered threshold response for the rest of your life if you have early life stress. So there's this sort of system reset that happens from the date that the trauma happened. And the problem is, in childhood, the brain is very plastic, which means it's very influenced by events around it. The brain doesn't just kind of grow in isolation. It is impacted, and the structure of it changes in response to our interactions with others and events. So if we didn't feel safe as a child, basically, then we get wired into the stress response. Once we're in the stress response, we're constantly in like survival brain, or we get easily triggered into that. And that causes that cascade of changes. And when we're in survival brain, the rest, digest, detoxify side gets downregulated. So we're really talking about the parasympathetic side of the nervous system, the vagus nerve. That is involved with things like digesting. So if you have a lowered vagal tone because you have survival brain from childhood, your vagus nerve is downregulated, your increased chance of intestinal permeability, you won't digest as well. That all starts overwhelming the liver. You don't detoxify through the liver as well either. So basically, the upshot is, if you're in survival and you don't have that sense of safety and your body's being reset, everything you do on the biochemistry doesn't work as effectively. Detox. You can be doing fasting, you can be taking things to detox, but if your body, I call it, are you in a stress state or a healing state? If you're in a stress state, nothing works as well. When you get into the healing state, that's when what you do on the biochemistry works again. So sometimes people only get so far in the biochemistry doing, whatever they're doing, metals, detoxing, chelation, maybe they're doing colonics or whatever. You'll get so far and then it'll look like nothing else is kind of coming out, and it's because you need to actually put the body into a healing state. Then you can go back to the biochemical interventions and they work better and stuff comes out again. So that's the biochemistry reset. But there's also just early life stress changes our emotional self as well. So like I mentioned, we feel not safe in our body, if you like. That also leads to behaviors which are sabotaging. So when we don't feel safe, early life stress leads to lack of sense of safety, lack of self-love, feeling not okay, feeling things just not good in your own skin, excessive perfectionism, tendency to overgiving to others is a big one, people pleasing, kind of it's to do with self-worth and self-esteem. All of that gets impacted when we have early life stress. We basically take what was an environmental failure on the caregiver's part, actually, we internalize that and we turn it often against ourselves, because it's the only way to it was survival, it was a coping mechanism to get through childhood. So we then it leads to behaviors like overachieving, overgiving, behaviors that sabotage self-care and that cause us to, not do a proper self-care regime. And that's when we just aren't detoxing properly. We don't spend enough time doing the behaviors that support regular detoxification, because detoxing is something for life, right? It's not something, how long should I eat vegetables for to be healthy? How long should I be meditating for to be healthy? Okay, so it's a lifestyle. And so early life stress is a massive factor, and stress in general. So, if you are stressed in your, in daily life, that's going to have a massive sort of impact on blocking what you're trying to do to detox for optimum health, energy, longevity, all those kinds of things. So that was a long explanation of how stress is
mind blown. No, that was awesome. Okay, so going back to what I find interesting now is that we kind of are out of control with the stresses that we pick up as a child, right? Because they're around us whether we like it or not. What about before we're born? Is there things that can come into play from our parents when we're not even born, or how does that when does that come into play?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's a particular type of trauma called attachment trauma, and it can happen between 0, which is like conception, all the way up to, it comes up to about age 3. So conception to age 3 is where there's consciousness, the fetus or the toddler or the baby, there's a level of consciousness there. Like it's sort of almost like an emotional ball at that age, where there's this pre-cognitive, it's before the thinking brain has come online, which happens about age 3, and we're just like a sponge, and we tend to absorb what's happening around us. So if mum's stressed, depressed, while the baby is still in utero, it totally impacts the epigenetic expression and the gut bacteria and everything of the baby as well. So I think it's called the fetal hypothesis syndrome, which is this idea that what's happening with mum and her levels of stress are absorbed by the baby, and it affects the epigenetic expression, can change the gut bacteria, and literally can imprint onto the baby before they're even born. So, and when they're born, it's then a question of emotional attunement. So when mum doesn't properly emotionally attune to the baby up to age 3, that also leads to attachment trauma. That essentially, there's studies showing that if a baby is feeling in a state of fear and doesn't have anybody calming it down for 45 minutes, it will go into clinical shock, which means it will literally, the survival brain kicks in. And the way the baby may respond might be to become an anxious adult, or a kind of a bit of a narcissistic adult, kind of a kind of adult that plays down emotions because it didn't get its needs met, so it assumes that those things aren't important. We also have something called, amazing, this is very interesting, mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are amazing. It's neurons in the brain that when mum has empathy and emotional connection with the baby will get empathy neurons. When there's no empathy, the baby doesn't develop them. So we tend to mirror and develop, our brains mirror our key caregivers. And the critical thing about attachment trauma, there's massive studies showing that it doesn't happen 50% of the time. Almost 50% of the time there isn't emotional attunement. So yeah, 50% of all babies don't properly attach. But then, we have a 50% divorce rate. There's a lot of emotional issues in society, right? So are we that surprised? In some ways, no. But yeah, people don't realise that there's these mega studies. Attachment trauma, which is up to that age group, is one of the most important types of trauma, and you can't really self-report it either. Did you have a traumatic childhood? It's pre-cognitive, isn't it? It's pre-age 3, so it's one of these areas that gets dramatically underestimated. It only shows up in adulthood when we might have trouble finding healthy relations, or we suffer from chronic anxiety, or we get a health condition, and that's the trigger to go, did something happen? And then you sort of have to go back and actually heal that. So yeah, it's a really good question.
And I think like this topic in itself is like a whole other conversation. I just got so interested in all of that, and I guess the question that I would have now is, how does someone go from this state to the healing state, like now as an adult?
Yes. Great question. So very important. It's so important that we just develop a sense of feeling good, a felt sense of well-being in our body. So a sense of safety, a sense of feeling that you like yourself, that the sense of feeling good, the higher emotions of feeling optimistic, enthusiastic, so it's something we have to cultivate, and it's a process. It's not always something. Sometimes we can get a one-off hit doing a one-off trauma intervention that clears something. Most of the time, because it's more what we call developmental trauma, most trauma from childhood and stress is actually, it's a daily thing, and it's learning to rewire the brains. So some of the things let's give some practical things that people can actually put into action, right? So when I'm working with people, one of the most important things to do is to start. Mindfulness is the most important sort of tool that you can bring, mindfulness. So it's starting to be aware of all the times that you don't feel safe, what triggers it, how are you actually feeling, so being in tune with the feelings, so that you can notice how much of the time you're actually not feeling a sense of well-being, a sense of happiness, a sense of feeling good. So you start to notice when you're not in that state, so mindfulness, and then it's a process of starting to reset. So one of the most important things you can do is actually, I get people to do, is like your morning routine is really important, and there's a set of things that you can do like that sets you up and sets the nervous system up for the day, like sets you up for the day. And I've got about 7 things that I'm working on, a kind of 7 minutes to supercharge, 7 minutes, that's in under pressure, but try, 30 minutes is probably better, but things like I spend a lot of time having people do grounding. And grounding it's just for a minute coming into the present moment, because the present moment is where there's a sense of safety. You see, now you're an adult, you're safe. And when we overreact to things when we're in stress, that's when we're in our heads, we're in a trance, and we're actually responding to the present moment with the past. Does that make sense? So when we're not perceiving something correctly, we're seeing danger where there's no danger. That means you're in your head, you're not grounded now in the present moment. So a lot of trauma therapy as well, it's very serious trauma, for car crashes, things like that. You have to train your sense to self to come into the present moment and notice when you're not in it. So grounding every day and starting a morning routine by grounding. How do you ground? It's just literally do a body scan, feel your feet on the floor, feel your butt on the chair, come into the present moment, feel the different sensations in your body, notice 5 things around you in the room, how are you feeling? So you're coming into the present moment. You can even add a sort of energetic aspect where you can imagine a cord from your bottom chakra going down into the root of the earth. So it's an imagination thing. But a lot of energy practitioners will have their sort of clients imagine that as well. So you imagine your energy being connected and rooted to the earth. So that helps like drain a lot of the excess, anxiety and kind of weird emotions that we've got going on. So grounding. So first thing in the morning, like ground. Number 2 is cultivating 5 minutes of meditation. So that is pure mindfulness, where you're bringing perhaps attention to the breath and training the mind to stay in the present moment by just gentle focus on the breath for 5 minutes. So do breathing for 5 minutes. So you're training yourself into the present moment. And then you could do some other things, like you could do a visualization that's a positive, emotionally uplifting visualization. Just 5 minutes of and it needs to be uplifting emotionally, because that raises vagal tone, and it might be centered on how do you want this day to go. So how do you want to feel today? I want to feel centered, certain, optimistic, happy, and joyful. So pick your words and imagine what and if you're trying to heal from some kind of chronic complex illness, I get all my clients to visualize their body working in full working order, with them having all the energy they need, their body working perfectly, digestion working well. Visualize it with a high emotional state, because that changes your biochemistry. You only have to look at the placebo effect to understand the mind effects of the body. So that's another thing you can do. Bit of gratitude journaling I get people to do. Maybe read something uplifting and then do a bit of exercise. So do something. Yoga is fantastic. Yoga does a lot of things in one. So breathing, awareness into the body. A lot of us sort of get into our heads and we aren't in our body. And that's when we can be much more swayed. We're in reactivity rather than choosing. So it's all about getting into this. I'm in charge. I have agency here, and I choose how I respond. So you have to slow down and center and feel to do that. So you need to do it daily. So then I also, the rest of the day, have people maybe once an hour, once every hour and a half, do a quick 1 minute reset where you just ground, check in, feel your body, feel your emotions, come into the present moment. So just, it keeps you grounded. So it's a quick nervous system reset through the day. In the evening time, the thing I would just say in the evening is practical stuff people can start to do straight away is go to bed at 9:30. If people just went to bed at 9:30, they would be amazed about how that can be life changing. Turn all the iPhones off, turn all the computers off, complete darkness, nothing in the room at night, completely dark. If you can get campfire light when it goes dark as well, so either blue blocking glasses or kind of turn all your bulbs to orange, which is how they used to have, this is all circadian rhythm management, which is major. It's like Harvard research and everything. To get a good night's sleep, you're more out of center if you don't sleep, whatever. So there's some practical, like go to bed at 9:30. Like if you actually did those things that I said, it's life changing. You'd be a different person. You'd feel so much better. I promise.
Not only am I a massive fan of having actual action steps, I think they were amazing. But I also want to highlight the fact that we are all so caught up in our heads, and then people get confused when people say just get out of your head. They're like, yeah, but how? How do I do that?
Yes.
And we haven't been trained, or we've been so in our head for so long that we don't know. So I think they were absolutely really powerful action steps that if people were writing them down right now and doing it, like it will be life changing. And the thing also is that no matter who anyone is, whether it's a 30-minute morning routine or like you said, a 7-minute, you can incorporate all of those things and work it to your lifestyle and still have a profound effect. Like just start somewhere. And I think they were really powerful to mention, because I was thinking, yeah, but how does one get out of their head? And you really laid them out perfectly. So I think they're great action steps for someone to take. What impact would this have on our body's detoxing?
Well, the very interesting thing is the more that you are in this sort of non-reactive, emotionally grounded, centered space, your body really mirrors your emotional state. So when you're in feel-good, relaxed, centered place, your brain and your cells are listening to that, and they will go into kind of not being in emergency mode either. It's when the body's in emergency mode that detox is down-regulated. If the body thinks that you're about to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger all the time, because remember, your body can't differentiate between reality and what you're thinking. So if you know that you get up like the house is on fire, you're in stress all the time, the brain is being told we're not safe here. This is not safe. We're unsafe. And that lack of sense of safety translates, you're breathing differently, you'll be breathing shallowly. There's neurons in the brain that are observing that and telling the amygdala in the brain, okay, this person is breathing really shallowly. Okay, we're breathing really shallowly. We must be under stress. So the amygdala is like the smoke alarm. It starts to go off like there's something wrong, there's something wrong. That starts that cascade of stress chemicals. And then the blood and the energy of the body goes away from organs involved with detox. Digestion's part of that too. You need good digestion, otherwise you're going to overwhelm the liver, and so on. So it's really the body will do reproduction, it will do detox, and it will digest when it's not on DEFCON 5 in your body. It's when you're feeling kind of calm, centered. Some of the most powerful detox I've been through has actually come from doing energetic work to clear trapped and unresolved emotions that also can directly interfere with organs as well. So it's kind of double faceted here. You've got this entire stress system, which the parasympathetic versus sympathetic side, where you want to be balanced so that side of the body's getting the message that, it's safe to do the things that are, essential to immediate life, expectancy. It's like things like reproduction. A lot of women that get fertility issues, they're in a chronic state of survival all the time. So the body just goes, okay, we're not worried about having a baby right now. And it's kind of the same with detox. But I would also say, just emotionally speaking, this is kind of going into Chinese medicine and that line of things. Most certainly trapped emotions in the energy field do get stored in different organs. For example, we know that anger can get stored in the liver. Grief is often like related to lungs. Sort of angst and agitation can be the spleen. And I work energetically with people a lot as well. And sometimes I'll give people things to take that are a bit like homeopathy, and they'll suddenly be really angry for a day, and they're just clearing out. It's a purging of that emotion. So, emotions, they're definitely real things. Your thoughts and your emotions, you could say your thoughts are electrical and emotions are magnetic. So they attract one another. If you've got a certain emotional state, you're going to attract certain thoughts and vice versa. But, heart rate variability, which is a test of the vagal tone, you can see that in waves on a computer screen. And HeartMath have correlated. They can look at somebody's heart rate variability reading, which is a waves of patterns, and they can tell you the emotional state that you're in with 75% accuracy. So, and these emotional states, these waves, speak to the cells. They're speaking to the organs. They're speaking to your heart, the brain. There's afferent nerves going from the heart up to the brain. So the brain's getting a message. So your emotional state, it's one thing. Mind and the body are one thing. So, if you're trying to, all the research shows that when you have a high vagal tone, which, by the way, how do you stimulate the vagus nerve? That's another thing we could briefly talk about, because that's fascinating. Stimulating the vagus nerve, they found that they can cure, they're using devices that they electrical devices stimulating the vagus nerve, cures arthritis in 8 weeks. They're showing amazing fibromyalgia cure rate in like 50% of people and they've never been able to cure fibromyalgia with any intervention they did with a vagus nerve stimulator. When you stimulate the vagus nerve, your emotional tone is higher. So they actually got researchers got groups of people to do a loving kindness meditation, and their heart rate variability went up. That means vagal tone goes up. So remember, when you increase vagal tone, you digest, gut motility improves, liver improves its digestion, inflammation levels come down. It turns out the vagus nerve switches off inflammation, which is why they cured the autoimmune guy. So the vagus nerve is massively important. We love the vagus nerve. We want to stimulate it. So there's tons of ways to stimulate the vagus nerve. Singing, meditation, humming will do it, loving kindness meditation, positive social relations, laughter. Most therapies that are working on the body, massage, intermittent fasting increases heart rate variability. So does certain types of green vegetable juicing as well, increases HRV. So there's a whole plethora of things you can do. So you can use bottom up and top down approaches, as we call it. But the more that you're doing to cultivate high vagal tone, that's, if you have a low heart rate variability, which means low vagal tone, that is associated with more of all cause of mortality than any other factor in the elderly, for example. So if you want to know the biggest risk for death, it's having a low heart rate variability, which means you're stressed. So, and you can have other stresses like physical toxins too. But, if you've got emotional toxins going on, toxic emotions, that has a massive impact as well. So there's lots of things, and it's about building that into your daily routine. Time, positive social relations are really important. Cut off all the media that's negative, whether it's news or TV, that kind of thing. They've shown that reduces vagal tone. Again, like watching a really violent video game, they've shown it reduces vagal tone. So you're shortening the lifespan doing that. So toxic people as well, got to be really careful with toxic people. They reduce your vagal tone. The energy vampires of it are real. So
Yep. That is actually fascinating. Like, that is really fascinating. And every time I'm just mind blown with how our body works and everything that's connected and what we can do right now without even needing to outsource. It's just like we can just laugh more or just sing a little bit more. And all of a sudden that will start to heal on different levels. And I think that's really fascinating, and where we have so much control, I guess, over what we can do to heal and to be in better health. So I think that's really powerful stuff. What do you have any other detox strategies that you would do every single day to really boost your own health or detoxification?
Yeah, I mean, I do have like a daily type of thing that I do. So I will, I'll do some of the standard stuff. I have lemon juice at first thing in the morning has been shown to help the liver. I often will go through a bout of taking certain herbs and so on, like milk thistle, some of the classical things that help detox. I do very regularly do sauna, which I think you've probably got a whole section on that. That's a massive one. So sauna's profound. But I have to say, I just kind of mention, I now, they're actually looking at psychedelic drugs to help release kind of, trauma and stuff. And for me now, I'm at the stage where if I do something that is actually centers me and I feel like I had a clearance of, say, guilt, or I cleared out some shame or something like that, I'll get more detox symptoms, meaning that it's stuff clearing through from doing that very high energetic work than I ever get from doing physical work these days. So I think it's probably maybe more attuned to it now though as well. But so the more that we can do, I have seen that working energetically as well. So I use something called infoceuticals, which is like energy and information printed on water, a little bit like homeopathy, not quite the same. And you see, this is one, we could talk all day, but think about a trauma. So a trauma is like a memory encapsulated and kind of stuck. And if you talk to all the trauma experts, we know it leaves this biochemical imprint because it changes all that epigenetic expression, as we mentioned. We know it leaves a nervous system imprint because we said it switches you from lowered vagal tone and you're in more of a stress state, and the brain gets on fire as well. The neurons are overfiring and we're kind of stressed all the time. So that's the neurological impact. But where a memory is stored, there's no research showing that memories are either stored in neurons or the connections between neurons. It looks like memories are actually stored in the fields that connect the neurons, the electromagnetic waves. So in that sense, trauma, memories, and so on actually exist in your energy field. It exists in your energy field. You have a profoundly important field around the body. Heart rate variability and heart math, they show that you've got this field around the heart, which is 100 times stronger than the field around the brain, for example. And so emotional states are kind of imprinted on the energy field as well. It's probably where they exist. And it's why there's also research showing people can lose parts of their brain and still have the same memories and still have function in the body. And it's because that information is imprinted on the field. So, and working energetically, here's the other amazing thing. Some of the top interventions for psychotherapies for trauma are energy based. So there's something called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That's a mainstream conventional intervention. It's the frontline therapy for like war veterans, yeah. But it involves like eye movements where there's no talking, and it involves like reprogramming the electromagnetic field around the brain and kind of the electrical fields. It's like EFT. EFT is tapping on acupuncture points. The emotional freedom technique, tapping. You may have heard of that. So when we're tapping here, we're tapping on the energy field. We're talking to the energy field doing this. It's not biochemical. That's the other top intervention. Neurofeedback is another massive intervention they're researching right now to resolve trauma. That's a type of feedback where you're looking at brain waves, and then you look at your brain waves on a computer screen, and then you correct your waves to calm them down. So it's a form of biofeedback. But you're not talking. It's all electrical. It's electromagnetic. So trauma, working on the energy level is really important as well. So that's why you could do something energetic, whether that clears an emotion or many of the energy medicine interventions, and get a detox reaction. Because you're clearing the energy field and a distortion in the energy field switches off detox enzymes, for example. A distortion in the energy field could prevent pathways for detox working properly. I think the upshot is you need a multifactorial approach. You should think about what you could do on the biochemistry level. You can intervene at the emotional level, working directly with emotions, and you can also work energetically with energy medicine or psychology interventions that are also based on that too. It's interesting that talk therapies aren't that effective for trauma and stress. Like talking about it is still stress. You can't talk yourself out of love or fear, really, right? but the body, but your brain will listen to you if you if you slow your breath down. The breath is the most powerful thing you could probably use. Actually, there's these neurons in the brain that are observing the rate that you're breathing, and when you slow the rate of breath down, the brain gets the message that you're safe. So it calms down, and the amygdala calms down. So breathing is one of the most powerful tools that we have to change your emotional state.
Yeah, because it sounds like something that you were saying before, where we're so caught up in our heads, and so by like bypassing the talking part and being stuck in a story, we're like bypassing that and going straight to just like getting rid of it without having to know. Because sometimes like you go through a massive release and you're like, I don't even know what that emotion was or where it came from or where it was from. But it's like, well, you don't need to know, just like release it and move on. I think people get caught up in needing to know the story and where it came from, and then that kind of holds people back. So it's interesting that you say that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a brilliant point. It's so true. So it's great because you don't have to get re-traumatized by having to go back to the memory, which can really happen, and you can have a bad reaction. And all you're doing by keeping on talking about it just re-traumatizes. Whereas, yeah, bypassing it, sometimes talking can help. You've never talked about something that happened in the past before to a professional or somebody very trusted who's non-judgmental. That can be very, very healing. So it's good then. But it's kind of, there comes a point that even the greatest insight that you may get, it doesn't change your reaction. Like, let's say you've got performance anxiety, however much insight you might have into the causes, it doesn't actually change the fact that you still have that reaction. So it's more this, these other non-verbal ways that you learn to communicate with your body through yoga, through breathing, through grounding, this kind of thing. And it's repetitive doing that, on a daily basis, because you've kind of programmed it mostly from childhood all in the opposite direction. Most of us get the negative program. Most of us get emotionally invalidated by the time we're adults. So I'm afraid those are the disturbing statistics, but they're true, sad but true. But it can all be reversed. So that's the most important thing. It's neuroplasticity. The brain can be changed for the worse or the better. Good.
Amazing. Well, I honestly could continue to talk all day. There's so many different ways that we could go about this, but you've shared such incredible information today, Niki. Where can people go to find out more about the work that you're doing and what you're doing in this world?
Yeah, sure. So my website address is nikigratrix.com. That's NIKIGRATRIX.com. And I've got plenty of free information on there. You can even tot up your own ACE score, but there's no cost and no opt-in required. So if you want to actually look at your own ACE score, it's all for free on my website.
Amazing. And is there anything that you want to end with today to leave us with?
That trust the body knows how to heal itself, and there's a part of you, however traumatized and messed up that you think that you are, there's a part of you in the present moment. You can only find it in the present moment when you have your pure consciousness there. That's the unbroken part of you, which is why you want to come into the present moment. So yeah, everything's possible.
So powerful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you and your work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sam, for having me, and thank you for doing a great summit on an important topic.